Welcome to the Solution Breakdown. I'm your host, Mark Baker. Uh, before we begin, hit that like and subscribe to the Hardcore Sports Network. We got a couple topics to talk about today. Let's get rolling. Uh, First off, I want to comment on that Thursday night game. Uh, I don't know what you do if you're Miami. I'm not I'm not sure what you do in that case. They had gotten rid of Brian Flores uh, because of his relationship with Tua, and they had hired a coach hoping that he would build that relationship with Tua, which he had. I mean, you saw that last night. They in tough situation. Tua's obviously a top 15 guy in the league. He's more than serviceable. They are very fast on offense with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. They have talent. But that fourth quarter, that last half of the fourth quarter was everything that's been wrong with Miami. Detail oriented. At the end of the day, when they really need to be buttoned up, they're not. So I don't know what you do in that case. Because you went from Brian Flores, who, towards the end of his tenure with Dolphins, they were buttoned up. They were as physical as a team as they have been since Jimmy Johnson, Dave Wanstead. But again, what is surfaced with Tua, yeah, it's gotten a little bit. It was definitely toxic, and I think it was the right move to. It was the right move. So the thing is now is what do you do if you're Miami? What do you do? Uh, well, listen. I mean, you watch this weekend. We're gonna have Broncos Chargers at SoFi. And what's been the difference between those teams? How have they jumped ahead of a Miami? Because it's simple. It's simple. At the end of the day, when they're not looking for some young-witted, smart, cerebral coach. They're looking for the guy that's a little rough around the edges, has coached in a Super Bowl, has won a Super Bowl, might be a little bit quirky, might be a little bit arrogant, but they're like, you know what? Not only can they work with the quarterback, but they're a culture setter. Mike McDaniel's not a culture setter. So what is the culture, Miami? I mean, that's been the problem with Miami for the past 25 years. It's what's their identity? Miami's one of those teams that, occasionally they'll have a good team. And, in the past 2 out of the last 3 years, they've made the playoffs. But they're practically the closest thing we have to a circled playoff win. What's the culture at the end of the day? That's why the Chargers and the Broncos, they've went in the direction that they've gone. Because great. There's a lot of, I mean, Adam Gase, Peyton Manning. I mean, like you have guys like Frank Reich, who I don't think is a bad coach, but you have a lot of guys that can work with quarterbacks that are good. But the reason it's working out in Minnesota is because they know what they are. There is a culture there. They call them the tunnel shove it. I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do. But if you're gonna do something, you might want to mirror. You might want to mirror the Chargers or Denver. Because listen, I'm not the biggest Sean Payton fan that's ever walked the planet. But that's what I want a football coach to be. I'm not looking for a guy that's super relatable. I mean, you hear about during election season. Oh, would I have a beer with that guy? I don't give a crap. I don't need the coach of my team to be relatable. I find I like Jim Harbaugh. He's a little quirky. He's a little bit quirky, but I don't need the guy to be like some dude I with. This is like the same thing of like, hell, we need more scientists in office. There's certain people that are meant to do certain roles. Sean Payton is arrogant, and as prickly and as crabby as he can be. I mean, the guy can command a room, and that's what I'm looking for, and that's what the Dolphins are looking for. Well, that's what they should be looking for. Not some guy that vapes and kind of has that like cool guy attitude, because this is the result of it. You could tell there's an aphasia. But that roughing the kicker in the kicker call, that's what the Dolphins are. That's what the Dolphins are. And that's the difference between them and Buffalo and Kansas City and Baltimore, the Chargers. I don't know what you do. Zayden definitely has to really look itself in the face and really ask itself. We can have all the fast and flashy receivers we want. And that may win us games, and it has. I mean, look at what Vic Fangio is. I mean, arguably they were the best defense in football last year with the Eagles. He now has a Super Bowl ring. I'm telling Miami, I'm out of here. I'm done. It's got to be a red flag. Oh, that's a tough situation. All right, we got next. Yeah, uh, Kansas City's in trouble. I mean, we, I came here on the show, and I came here on the show with Mitch, and we both said, "Nah, this is not a must-win." Listen, we can blame Travis Kelce all that we want, but he had a decent game. I mean, he had a play where he kind of like pushed around. He pushed around DeJean for a play. I mean, yeah, he had a it's very clear watching him out there that he's lost. It's very clear, but he's still serviceable, and that's saying it's a game that Kansas City could have very well won. I mean, we can't wait Eagles. This is not sustainable. This is not going for 100 yards. I mean, they've won what 17 out of the last 18 games. We're waiting. We claim it's not sustainable, but here we are. But that was a very winnable game for Kansas City. That's a demoralizing gut punch of a win, of a loss, I should say. I think they're in trouble. I think we just assume they're going to just start winning some games, and they're going to be 9-8. They may get the 7 seed. Understand they've represented the AFC 5 out of the last 6 years. That's totally understandable. Totally understandable. But this kind of reminds me a little bit when the greatest show on turf had its demise. Coming off coming off a huge upset against Tom Brady. Brady won his first Super Bowl against the Rams. Rams were, you know, 2 touchdown favorites, and they lost. And that year in 2002, they started 0-5. They were never, they've never been the same since. Well, they never were the same again in St. Louis, I should say. They were 0-5, and no one can see. I mean, we all assume that Kansas City this weekend they're going to beat the Giants. The Giants are in a tough spot too. But Russell would hate, and some of it is his own making. He a politician. His play has not mirrored. His production is not enough to where we can put up with all the the politician act. I mean, when he was about 6-7 years ago and he was cooking in Seattle, yeah, it's all Russell being quirky. Now that production isn't there, but he can still play. Let's not forget last year in Pittsburgh. He was that was the first time that Pittsburgh has solidified anything on on offense. I mean, for the first time, they seem to have some type of harmony on offense since Big Ben was there. It's not all on Russell Wilson that they had an almost near collapse, and yes, a collapse, and nonetheless, they did make the playoffs, but they got thrashed. But Russell Wilson was the reason why they were in that position. Russell Wilson can still play. He's not what he once was. But I think in that Dallas game he showed that he can play. So I would not circle this as, oh, Kansas City's going to be fine. They're going to just button things up. Because after that week 2 game, that was theirs for the taking. The Eagles are throwing for under 100 yards. Their passing game is at question. If you would have told me any other team, which is what sets Philly apart, any team that the quarterback's throwing for under 100 yards. And I forget the statistic of what he is throwing, what Hurts is throwing to wide receivers. But I'd be like, they're definitely 1-1. That's best case scenario. Now they're 2-0, and that's that. You got to give Philly credit for that. But I think going into this weekend, I wouldn't assume that matchup against the Giants is just, oh well, they're gonna just start winning. And a big feel of the end of that greatest show on turf. Sometimes when you're used to being the man and you get humbled a little bit, it's hard to get back on top. I mean, I remember watching the Friday night game in Brazil with the Chargers and the Chiefs. I'm watching them, and I'm happy. I'm ready. It's like Chargers are going to win this game, and whew, like sometimes what it felt like by the skin of our teeth, because with Mahomes you never know. And I remember thinking, I was like, you know what, this has a big Kobe in between his last title in 2002 and to his title in 2009. It has definitely a feel of a Kobe situation, where they had guys like Kwame Brown, Smush Parker, a bunch of guys that were fine, were decent, but it's that transition period where you're used to being on top, and now that you get punched in the mouth a little bit, you go through a transition period. The Warriors had that. Remember, after Klay Thompson got hurt in the finals against the Raptors, they were abysmal. They used that pick on James Wiseman, didn't work out, but that organization, well run, they're now back to a contender to the extent of what they were 8 to 10 years ago. No, but they still have managed to put a contender, and they have a tight speed at it. So whether the season is lost, I I don't know. I'm thinking that they're going to be in trouble. It's that now you're not looked at as the favorite anymore. And then what do you do at receiver as well? Rashee Rice is he's remember he's coming off of a suspension, but he's also coming off an injury. I mean, who knows about who Xavier Holly Brown's fine, Juju Smith Schuster's fine, but they just don't have that security blanket anymore. Travis Kelce can't provide that anymore. And the ball, Pacheco has been extremely hit or miss. Kareem Hunt has been fine, but I mean, and you do have a good tackle in Simmons. The other side of action. This could be a transition period. I would not surprise me if they're looking at 0-4, and we're looking at the Chiefs. What's going on? But that's okay. That would be okay. Because sometimes some of these teams need to go through. New England was a complete outlier. You get one team in every 25 years that just they can just sustain this for long periods of time. Even the Rams had to go through it. Their year after that Super Bowl was god awful, but they needed that reset. They needed that reset. We all thought they were going into a rebuild in 2023. They needed that reset. A lot of these teams, they need that reset. And the modern salary cap, free agency, it's hard to sustain that. New England is the outlier. You just don't get that anymore. So my upset of the week is I think the Giants are going to beat the Chiefs. I think listen, they were in position to win that game. Dallas arguably believe me, when he kicked a 64-yarder looked like it could have been good for 74. I've never seen it like this. Is I remember the day where if someone kicked a 52-yard field goal, you're like, oh wow, he drilled. Wow, that was awesome. Now we look at that as all right, 52-yard field goal, you got to make that. Like it's just a different game. It's a different game with these kickers. But the Giants were in position to win that game, and they very well could have. And here's the thing with the Giants. Like I said, Russell Wilson is very serviceable. But him throwing for 400 yards, I mean, the loss is the insult to injury. But the injury then comes from, well, what do you do with Jackson Dart? Because you know that Russell Wilson is not the future of this team. He's not the future. So him playing well takes time away from Jackson Dart. You want to be able to see by Thanksgiving of 2026 is Jackson Dart the guy? And if you're not going to compete for a division, this is the risk. This is the risk, right? And this is what we're kind of experiencing with Michael Penix. We think he's the guy, and he definitely has shown signs, but we really need an entire season. As opposed to what the Bears are doing with Caleb Williams. We now are going to know by Thanksgiving this ain't going to work. And right now it's heading towards it's not going to work. Now I'm a little bit more give the guy a little bit of time. I think all the things that are said about him are true. Let's give him a little bit of time, and I'll talk about that later on. But this is the reality. This is the reality. It's that you're 0-2. The guy throws for 450 yards. I mean, it's one thing if you won the game. Then you'd be looking at 1-1, and you'd be looking at it like, maybe we can be competitive. Maybe we got a roster that can compete for a wild card. Now you lose that game, you're 0-2. With Philly in the division, who is obviously like they're pretty much penciled in for 12 to 13 wins. So you have the defending Super Bowl champion, arguably the favorite to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl again, and arguably the favorite to win it all again. And then you have Washington, who with Jaden Daniels stays healthy and that roster can stay healthy, they are definitely formidable in that division. And now after we learn from week 2, Dallas might be a little bit better than we think they are. Now you're tough because you got a guy now playing well, but he's not he's not the future. So it's a bad place to be for the Giants. Now they come out and win this weekend, it may change. Guy throws with I think the best case scenario for the Giants would have been they lost that game and Russell Wilson didn't play well. Because at least you're like, well, hey, we got it. We got a guy we want to see if he can play or not. Now you're in a tough spot of, well, Russ is playing well, and he might give because what happens if Russell Wilson plays well, somewhat well, he gets injured, and Jackson Dart plays, and it's clear it's not it. I guess what do? You try again. So I don't know about the Giants. I'm not sure about the Giants here. But I do think on Sunday I think they got to. That's a sleeper. That's my sleeper pick. I think the Giants beating the Chiefs. I think is a pick that I would go for. Okay. So yeah. There's been a lot of talk about the tush push. Listen, if you're an Eagles fan, why I get it. Why are you punishing a guy who has an extremely unique skill set? It definitely is not always the offensive line. Most of it is Jalen Hurts. If it was an offensive line, I heard this the other day. Then why aren't the Packers? Why aren't the Lions? Some of these teams that have good, the Chargers. Why aren't they running it with regularity and with success? I mean, it is Jalen Hurts. I understand if you're an Eagles fan, you're like, why would they ban this play? You're punishing us. We're good at something and you're punishing us for it. I totally understand. And I totally understand about the injury thing. And the thing about the injury, about the argument is, I remember in 2011, 2012 with the new CBA that they had at the time, and we were talking a lot about player safety. There was a whole lawsuit that former players had on the NFL. And yeah, but safe. But in a game, this is a game that it is never going to be 100% safe. We look at the game, uh, you know, we look at the game today and we're like, this game's kind of soft than it was 15 years ago. For the better, yeah. But this argument is very relative. And also, just given the fact that on the offensive line for the Eagles, they've had injuries, but it wasn't from that play. And the whole safety argument is like, this is this is always going to be a violent game. It's hard to police safety. It really is. Because you're going to always have to accept little small margins of improvement that never actually lead to what you want and what we claim we want, which is safety. I mean, the reality is, if we want to make this game safe, don't play it. That's the reality, and we're not going to do that. So I don't think that's really it with the tush push. And I think the Eagles have a very valid argument when they talk about it is not a safety issue. It has not been a safety issue at all. But what it is, and this is what the NFL has every right to do. The NFL has every right to do is to say, listen, this is bad competition. This is a bad product we're putting out here. The play is automatic, and if you happen to stop it, they'll run it again, and it's a guarantee. You are not going to stop it once, and you're definitely not going to stop it twice. Usually it's about 3 years till the NFL's caught up on innovation. I remember the Wildcat. The Wildcat was, I mean, it took about a year, maybe a year and a half to really catch up to it. And now it's a gimmick. Now it's back to being a gimmick again. The read option was another one. When Colin Kaepernick was when Colin Kaepernick came roaring in to the league. That was a thing that you could not stop. Well, you get a little bit of tape, year, and by 3 years after it came onto the scene, yeah, it's been slowed down. But we've been 3 years with tush push, and you cannot. And yes, it's a unique skill set to get from one guy. That's yeah, and I get it. You're a Philly fan. Why would you want it? Yeah, like I would totally understand. Teams crying the play. I get it. But I think the NFL has a right to put out a good product, and that's not a good product. Similar to baseball with the shift. Similar with baseball with the pitch clock. At the end of the day, the NFL is a product, and it has to put out a good product for its consumers. And this is not good. It's not good for the league to have that play in there. I get it. It's not a change play. And I get it. There's one guy in the league that can do it, and everyone can do it. But I don't remember. I was not alive here. 70s, a rule called the blunt, because you could be able to maul receivers. Everyone could do it. But there's a reason why they put the Mel Blunt rule. Because the Steelers, and maybe even the Raiders, would absolutely grab and hold on and maul receivers. And the league stepped in for safety reasons, but also because, again, what drives what drives the NFL consumer product is the passing game. They wanted to see more scoring, and they weren't seeing enough scoring. Nobody likes defense. I heard this is absolutely true. No one likes good defense. You like your defense, but you don't like defense. No one wants to really watch a 10-7 game or a 12 game. People like fireworks. People like exciting. People want scoring. That's what drives. That's what drives. That's what drives the ratings. That's what gets people engaged. And this play is starting to become something that people don't want to engage with. And I saw that Sirianni had a press conference like this play is really interesting, and it's it is an exciting play. It's like, yeah, for you, and yeah, for that fan base it is, because of course, right? If it's 3rd and 1, there's no guarantee we're going to pick this up. And I have a message for any, listen, the reality is that, let's say if Dallas was running this play, every Eagles fan would want this play banned. Listen, it's great when your team does it. But the NFL has a certain level of responsibility to say, nah, this is too much. You can't be doing this. You can't. This is, and I don't like to use this isn't fair, but this is not good competition. This is not good competition, because ultimately it is a play that cannot be stopped through any type of scheme. This is just an advantage that the league has every right to say, no, we're going to go away with this. And let's not forget that they barely got votes just to keep it. And I would even say that those teams don't love it as well, just based off of the principle, and the Eagles doing a very good job in the owners meeting at the time, persuading other teams. That is the only reason why we have it today. But I strongly believe this is the last year that we see this play. This is I believe the last year we're going to see it. So if you're Philly, you better win the Super Bowl this year, because your automatic play, it's going to be gone. You better win it this year. So that's my thoughts on that. A couple other things. Again, Caleb Williams struggling. That's a. I mean, listen. There's a couple of very confusing things out there with Caleb. He ad libs too much, and he can't, and he doesn't go for the check down. He doesn't seem like really an NFL franchise quarterback. But if you look at the first two drives into on script, he's pretty, which tells us we know Ben Johnson can coach. We know Ben Johnson can coach. And listen, after Dallas's that weekend of throwing 450 yards to a guy who is, some argue, is a shell of himself, this is a big weekend for Caleb Williams against a Dallas defense that, listen, I mean, they've only really played well in one half of football. Again, in that weird Thursday night game with the delay and whatnot, it threw both teams off. Dallas has not played well. This is an opportunity for Caleb Williams. And he's been able to hit the scripted, easy stuff that Ben Johnson draws up. So he can He can do it. But the problem is that instinctually, he doesn't have that what we always remember a Tom Brady has, what we know a Peyton Manning has, which is taking what gives you. Sometimes throwing to the check down. Like half of these New England runners, I don't like outside of they had Corey Dillon that one year. They had a bunch of guys that just would catch balls out of the backfield. A James White, a Dion Lewis, a Shane Green type guy. Even a Danny Woodhead. Guys that weren't dominant bell cow runners, but they could because that's how Manning and Brady that's how they played. They had guys that they could like off script. They're not trying to. They take what the defense gives them naturally. They don't need to have it schemed up because what we've seen from Caleb Williams off script has been, it doesn't seem like he's got good touch on the ball. Uh, it just seems mostly out of rhythm. Uh, it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. And honestly, you can pencil everything past that first drive. Pencil it off. Because the past 2 weeks we've seen okay, Ben Johnson can coach. Because here's a guy outside of that first drive, and he doesn't. I, I mean, this phrase is being tossed around, but we could have man. But who we're not looking at a bus right now is Baker Mayfield. Uh, wow. I was seeing a lot of coverage about there's a good fit in Tampa. He's a good fit in Tampa. I saw a mistake for the Browns to let him go. And listen, there's some media markets that I don't think are doing any teams any favor. I think Philly is a big example of things are just manufactured. It's a lot of manufactured bullshit, which I think might hurt them in the long run. We claim the drama hurts them, but it's just the manufactured bullshit that continues to hurt them. And Tampa, yeah, it's a little bit more loose. Plus you have a pretty stable GM in Jason Light. A roster that, believe me, it wasn't just Brady. Brady was the finishing because they were competitive the year prior with Jameis Winston. Tampa drafts well. I mean, I look at I remember back in the day we talked about the Steelers draft receiver very well, but I'm sitting with man. I mean, can't we say the same about Tampa Bay? And plus, you have a bit of a quieter, it is an old base. It's a quieter media market. It works for Baker. Baker's a little bit of a cockier guy. He's not afraid to go there. And in Cleveland, it just doesn't work. And that would be my a defense of Caleb Williams. That maybe he can't play. Maybe it is of the media market. That really has to do. It's a lot of pressure. The organization, the Browns as an organization, it was just completely chaotic. And now you go to a place where, they're pretty stable, pretty quiet, do a lot of things well. It's a division that doesn't make a lot of noise. I think a lot of guys can play, and this is why, and this is a big reason why the Jets haven't had a stable franchise quarterback. You deal with a dysfunctional management system, and then you have a loud media market. I mean, you walk into that building and they expect you to be the savior. With Tampa, it's like, hey, we had a good roster. We had a 45-year-old Tom Brady leading us to the playoffs. We do things fairly well around here. It's a happy hour type of place. Tampa is. New York is an extremely intense place. They're not afraid to boo you. They're not afraid to kick you to the curb. I mean, I always look at like Philly as a place of like, if the Eagles lose this weekend to the Rams, fire everybody. That's the notion in some of these places. Fire everybody. We all suck. Tampa, it's a little bit like, go get him next time, Tiger. We got the beach here. And look at what's happened with Baker Mayfield. So in essence, it's, we talk about the player being a bust. And I heard something, well, you can't put it all on the GM because, he's responsible for, evaluating the talent and picking the talent. It's then on the coaching staff. But it's not necessarily on the GM necessarily, because he's not really hiring the coach. But it is, I would say, management and ownership that need to be more of this brunt. It's a little different with Caleb Williams, but I think that I do think that and the ownership in Chicago, they need to be held accountable, because Baker Mayfield's an example of a guy didn't really work in Cleveland, but goes to a stable organization and he flourishes. I mean, yeah, he's slimmed down. It's very clear he's slimmed down. He's a little bit more quicker and more explosive than he was, let's say, in Cleveland. That could be all true, but he's now in an organization where he can flourish, and that's the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. I mean, after this weekend, who knows if it's going to work out? Who the hell knows it's going to work out with Liam Cohen? Who the hell knows? If he goes somewhere else, I mean, this is what we're talking about with Burrow. I mean, that's why I think Burrow is ahead of Lamar. What he does with such a cheap, old school run franchise, little doofangles. Not many guys can do that. I don't think we give Carson Palmer as much credit for what he did with that Bengals franchise. So listen, we hold these players accountable, and we need to start holding these GMs and these owners accountable. And I'm glad we're starting to do that more, because some of these players go to other places and they play well. So what the hell's happening? So explain that. So I'm happy for Baker. Listen, there's two of those games that they very well could have lost. They're 2-0, and I would even say, I mean, Baker's really showing me that, like, I think that we might be ready to bring him in quarterback. Um, I think he's definitely moved up. Uh, I, I listen, it's 2 games, but I'd put him ahead of Jalen Hurts. I mean, it was in that poll, anonymous poll, it was Jalen Hurts 9, Baker 10. I'd jump him. I would jump Baker over Jalen Hurts. Well, he played well in the Super Bowl. Okay, well, Joe Flacco played well in the Super Bowl. We're not considering Joe Flacco an all-time great. But what we're seeing from Baker is definitely what what the Jets haven't had, what the Jaguars wish they had gotten from Trevor Lawrence, what the Bears are letting go of hope about Caleb Williams. So good for Baker. I'm happy for him. One other thing before we get out of here. A couple of one injury I want to talk about a little bit. Bengals. There's a lot that say the Bengals are done. Um, Joe Burrow's probably out for 3 months, could potentially miss the rest of the season, and a lot of people are putting Cincinnati out at this point. And I'm not a doctor. I don't know the severity of the injury. I mean, I was even recently, up to recently, I've been very unclear of what turf toe is. Um, but the reality is with the AFC is that Buffalo is obviously going to win that division. The Jets are not there yet, and Miami I think is going to be a dumpster fire. New England has potential. Has potential. The AFC West, the Chiefs are 0-2, and like I've said, I think they're in trouble. And Denver, we're not there yet, but in the next 6 weeks, we'll have a better sense of is Bo Nix a franchise quarterback? Is he a project, or is he a franchise quarterback? And I think we'll have clarity in the next 6 weeks. And the Chargers have looked good so far. Uh, the Chargers have looked good so far. With obviously the Rashawn Slater injury, it's a matter of can that offensive line stay healthy, and also is that Khalil Mack injury, which was oh god, that was tough. Um, and how long is he going to be out for? How long is he really going to be out for? Um, my point with bringing up some of these divisions is that in the AFC, we know who's going to be at the top. You've got Baltimore and you've got Buffalo. I mean, those are the cream of the crop. Then you got teams like Pittsburgh, you got like a Kansas City, you got a Denver. The Chargers look good. The Chargers look good. The Colts I think will probably win that division, but you still have CJ Stroud in Houston. There's been a number of AFC teams that have gone on are off to slow starts. They're off to slow starts already. We don't even know. Who knows? They could just like I was saying with Kansas City, it just might be a scenario where that with Houston, it might not be a slow start. They might not be as good, and they might have to look themselves in the mirror. So my point with Cincinnati is that if they can somehow be at a 7-6 late in the year, and Joe come back, I think the Bengals can be. This season is not over for the Bengals. I think once you went, maybe even 6-7. I think if Joe Burrow can come back, that you're Jake Browning. Jake Browning is going to have to find 4 wins. Well, and I don't even know. Is is uh is JJ McCarthy even going to play? Even so, even if JJ McCarthy was to be out, um, and Carson Wentz is going to start, that's a very winnable game for Cincinnati. And so, if you win that game, you're 3-0. You essentially have to, until December, you've got to find a way to get 3 or 4 wins. Just get 3 or 4 wins in the next 8 weeks. Find a way to do it. Because if you can get Joe to come back, you're 7-6. Maybe even 6-6. I think you still got a shot. Because I don't know if Joe Burrow's ever been the same since his knee injury in 2020. But that's not necessarily his game. We don't know Joe Burrow for running. It's a feature. We need Joe Burrow the passer. And if he can, and if the I mean, God only knows if the rehab goes well. That's a tough injury. There's been some reports that like some guys have just never been able to really come back ever again. Um, I, that's it's tough, but I don't think that they're done. I don't think the Bengals are done. In a very in an AFC that we have seen a lot of mediocrity, the Bengals are already 2 games ahead of where they need to be. They just need to find their way and get like 4, maybe 5 more wins at this point. They get themselves at a point of where Joe can come back. And I have every confidence. I have all the confidence in the world that if Joe Burrow is 90% of what he was, that's going to be enough to get Cincinnati in the playoffs. Because what he did last year with a defense that was atrocious, and they still managed to be 9-8. I had saw something with the level of production that defense had last year. They were projected to go like 4-13. So, and which Cincinnati's defense, listen, like they you can say that's Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, the defense didn't play bad. They needed to stop late in the game. They got it, which ultimately set up the game-winning drive. I don't think they're done. I don't think they're done. All right. All right. Well, great show today. I'm getting out of here. Remember, like and subscribe. Hit that button below. Hit that button like you've never hit it before. Like and subscribe to the Hardcore Sports Network. I've been Mark Baker. It's been a great show. This has been the Solution Breakdown. And thank you all.